My billionaire grandfather bequeathed me his whole $1.2 billion estate. You know that feeling when your heart is pounding so hard it feels like it might burst right out of your chest? That's me right now, sitting in the waiting room of one of Manhattan's most prestigious law firms. Because across from me, whispering and throwing smug glances my way, are my parents. The very same people who haven't spoken to me in 9 years. Not since they kicked me out on my 18th birthday. And they have no idea what's about to happen. I'm Gracia Harrison, and last month I turned 27. My parents are here today, looking polished and perfectly composed, because my grandfather Walter, the only person who ever truly saw me, has died. And he's left behind a fortune worth an unimaginable $1.2 billion. The truth is, they've been counting on that money. They've been counting on his money, and they've been counting on me to be nothing more than a footnote. But this will reading? This is about to turn their entire world upside down. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how my billionaire grandfather's final act of love not only changed my life but completely unmasked my family. Growing up as Eleanor and Thomas Harrison's daughter wasn't the fairy tale most people pictured. From the outside, we were the perfect American family. Dad, the son of a billionaire, Mom, from old money, our mansion in the wealthiest part of Boston. But behind those grand ornate doors, it was a completely different story. I was never a priority. My earliest memories are filled with my mother's heavy sighs whenever I needed anything, as if my very existence was an inconvenience. Gracie, Mommy has an important charity gala to plan, she'd say, always while flipping through glossy fashion magazines, never actual charity plans. My father? Rarely home, always chasing important deals that somehow never materialized. They saw me as a burden. An obligation. A box to check on their perfect life checklist. Beautiful house? Check. Lavish parties? Check. Child to complete the family portrait? Check. Actually parent that child? Well, that was nowhere on their list. Then there was Grandpa Walter. He was everything my father wasn't. He built his empire, Harrison Technologies, from a tiny electronics repair shop in the 1950s. Despite his incredible wealth, he never lost his grounding, never forgot where he came from. Gracie girl, he'd tell me during our precious weekend visits, his calloused hands gently holding mine. Remember, money doesn't make the person. Your actions, your integrity, your compassion for others. That's what truly matters in this life. While my parents were schmoozing at social gatherings, Grandpa taught me how to fish at the small lake on his property. When my academic achievements were met with my parents' disinterested nods, he'd celebrate by taking me for ice cream, listening for hours as I talked about my favorite subjects. When I cried because my mother missed my piano recital again, he was there, in the front row, applauding louder than anyone. I understand how you feel, sweetheart, he confided once when I was 12. My own father wasn't there for me either. Too busy drinking away what little money we had. That's why I promised myself I'd always be there for my family. The irony, that his own son had become just as emotionally absent despite having everything, wasn't lost on either of us. Even though Grandpa never explicitly criticized my father in front of me, his silent disappointment was palpable. When I turned 16, my parents made a decision that revealed just how little they valued their parental responsibilities. Over dinner one night, my mother clinked her crystal glass with a silver spoon. Gracie dear, we have wonderful news, she announced, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. You've been accepted to Westfield Academy. Westfield, an exclusive boarding school 3 states away. I hadn't applied. I hadn't even known they were considering sending me away. But I don't want to go, I protested, desperately looking between them, searching for any flicker of understanding. Don't be ridiculous, my father replied, cutting his steak with precise, clinical movements. It's the best education money can buy. And besides, your mother and I have important business overseas next year. This way we won't have to worry about you. Just like that, I was shipped off. My little brother, Jackson, only 15, hugged me goodbye with tears streaming down his face. I'll miss you, Gracie, he whispered. Even at Westfield, Grandpa Walter made sure I wasn't alone. Despite being in his late 70s, he'd make the 3-hour drive every other weekend. The school staff knew him well, this distinguished gentleman who always brought cookies and books for his granddaughter. During those visits, on a quiet bench in the gardens or a corner cafe, he'd share stories of his youth, business wisdom, And most importantly, he'd listen to me. Really listen, in a way my parents never had. Your parents, he said once with a deep sigh. They've forgotten what really matters. They've confused having wealth with being worthy. He squeezed my hand. Don't ever make that mistake, Gracie girl. The size of your bank account means nothing compared to the size of your heart. Little did I know how prophetic those words would become, or how his wisdom would prepare me for what was coming next. My 18th birthday should have been a celebration. A milestone. Instead, it became the day my parents officially washed their hands of me. I'd come home from Westfield for summer break, excited to start Brown University in the fall. I had a partial scholarship, and I assumed the college fund Grandpa Walter had established for me at birth would cover the rest. Or so I thought. The morning of my birthday, I found my parents sitting at the dining table. Unusually present for a weekday. Happy birthday, Gracie, my father said, his tone chillingly businesslike. Now that you're 18, we need to discuss your future. My mother nodded, barely looking up from her phone. You're an adult now, which means you need to take responsibility for yourself. We've decided it's time for you to understand financial independence, my father continued. The partial scholarship is a start, but you'll need to figure out the rest on your own. A cold weight settled in my stomach. What about my college fund? The one Grandpa set up. A flicker of discomfort crossed my father's face. That fund. There have been some adjustments. Adjustments? My voice rose. What does that mean? After some pressing, the truth emerged. They had borrowed from my college fund years ago. For one of my father's failed business ventures. To renovate their Hamptons vacation home. To fund my mother's cosmetic procedures. The fund, which should have contained over $300,000, had less than $20,000 left. You had no right. I screamed, tears streaming down my face. That was my money. Grandpa put that aside specifically for my education. Don't take that tone with us, my mother snapped, her voice cutting. We've given you everything. Everything. I retorted. A privileged life, private education that you couldn't wait to send me away to. You've never even wanted me around. That's enough. My father slammed his hand on the table. If you're going to be ungrateful, perhaps you should consider other living arrangements. Thomas, my mother whispered, though without much conviction. No. Eleanor. Gracie is an adult now. She wants to make adult decisions and accusations. She can live with adult consequences. The argument escalated, until my father, red-faced and shouting, told me to get out. You have until the end of the day to pack your things. And don't think about running to Walter. He doesn't need to be bothered with this family drama at his age. Midway subscribe line. By the way, if you're still with me and hanging on every word, please do hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and moments of truth are coming your way. Main story continued. I called Grandpa anyway, of course, but only reached his voicemail. He was on a business trip to Japan, unreachable for the next week. In a daze, I packed what I could into 2 suitcases and a backpack. As I was leaving, my little brother Jackson tried to stop me. Please don't go, Gracie, he begged, his 15-year-old face streaked with tears. I hugged him tight. I have to, Jax, but I'll call you. I promise. My father appeared in the hallway. Jackson, go to your room. Gracie was just leaving. That was the last time I saw my brother for years. My parents changed their numbers, blocked me on social media, and informed Jackson's school that I was not to have contact with him. I spent that night in a cheap motel, using some birthday money Grandpa Walter had sent me. The next day, I found a slightly more affordable youth hostel and started looking for jobs. With only a high school diploma and no work experience, my options were painfully limited. For months, I pieced together a living, working at a coffee shop in the mornings, a bookstore in the afternoons, and food delivery on weekends. I deferred my acceptance to Brown, knowing there was no way I could afford it, and enrolled in community college classes instead, paying as I went. Grandpa Walter was devastated when he returned from Japan and learned what had happened. He immediately offered to buy me an apartment, pay for Brown, set me up completely. I appreciate that more than you know, I told him during one of our dinners, but I need to do this myself. I need to prove to myself that I can. He respected my decision, though I could tell it pained him. You're stronger than all of us, Gracie girl, he said, his eyes misty. But promise me you'll let me help in small ways. An old man needs to feel useful. So, we compromised. I would make my own way, but he could send occasional care packages, take me to dinner when he was in town, and we'd maintain our close relationship. He also sent letters, actual handwritten letters, full of advice, encouragement, and love. Those letters became my lifeline during the hardest times. After a year of struggling, exhausted from working 3 jobs and taking night classes, I finally caught a break. A customer at the coffee shop, Sofia Rodriguez, mentioned that the startup she worked for was looking for an administrative assistant. The pay isn't amazing, she admitted, but it's better than service industry wages, and there's room to grow. I applied and was hired by Marcus Chen, the founder of Green Tech Solutions, a small company developing sustainable technology. Marcus saw something in me beyond my limited resume. "You have grit," he said after my interview. "That's something I can't teach. The rest you can learn." Green Tech became my new home. Sophia became my best friend. And Marcus became a mentor. For the first time since leaving my parents' house, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I worked harder than ever, learned everything I could, and was promoted to project coordinator within a year. Through all of this, Grandpa Walter remained my biggest supporter. He never once said, "I told you so" about my parents, though he had every right to. Instead, he celebrated my small victories and encouraged me through every setback. "I'm proud of the woman you're becoming," he told me on my 24th birthday. 3 years after I started at Green Tech, "You've built something real here, Gracie. Something honest that's worth more than any inheritance." I had no idea then how those words would echo in my mind just 3 years later, sitting in that lawyer's office, facing the family that had thrown me away. The call came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a presentation to potential investors for Green Tech's new solar panel technology, when my phone vibrated repeatedly in my pocket. After the third call in 5 minutes, I excused myself. It was Martha, my grandfather's housekeeper of 30 years. "Gracie dear," her voice trembled on the line. "It's your grandfather. He's had a stroke. They've taken him to Massachusetts General." The world tilted sideways. I mumbled something to Marcus about a family emergency and was in a cab to the airport within the hour. My presentation forgotten, my mind focused only on getting to Boston as quickly as possible. By the time I reached the hospital, Grandpa Walter had been stabilized and moved to the ICU. I found his room easily. It was the one with a small crowd gathered outside. People I recognized, but hadn't seen in 9 years. My parents, Aunt Sarah, and Uncle Richard. My father's siblings, and cousins I'd played with as a child. They all turned as I approached, expressions ranging from surprise to undisguised disdain. "What are you doing here?" My mother's voice was cold, her Botoxed face barely moving as she spoke. "Martha called me," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "He's my grandfather." "Well, we're handling everything," my father said dismissively. "The doctors say he needs rest. Family only." "I am family." I stood my ground, meeting his gaze directly. Aunt Sarah scoffed. "Family doesn't abandon family, dear." The hypocrisy was staggering. But before I could respond, a doctor emerged from Grandpa's room. "He's asking for Gracie," she announced to the group. The look on my parents' faces was almost worth the 9 years of pain they'd caused me. Almost. Grandpa Walter looked smaller, somehow, lying in that hospital bed, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. But his eyes lit up when he saw me, and he reached for my hand with surprising strength. "Gracie girl," he whispered, his voice rough. "You came?" "Of course I came," I said, blinking back tears. Nothing could have kept me away. Over the next few weeks, I split my time between the hospital and a nearby hotel. Marcus was incredibly understanding about my sudden leave of absence. "Family comes first," he said. "The company will be here when you get back." As Grandpa's condition stabilized, I noticed a strange pattern. Relatives who had barely visited him in years now appeared daily, bringing gifts, asking detailed questions about his treatment, and most tellingly, having hushed conversations about his businesses and properties whenever they thought no one was listening. "They've been circling like vultures," Martha confided in me one afternoon while Grandpa napped. "Ever since the news of his stroke got out. Some of them I haven't seen in this house in a decade. Now suddenly they're concerned about his favorite foods and what makes him comfortable." Grandpa Walter wasn't fooled either. During our private moments, when he was feeling stronger, he would share his observations. Thomas came in yesterday talking about how he's been studying the market trends relevant to Harrison Technologies, he told me with a dry smile. The boy hasn't shown interest in the actual workings of the company a day in his life. Always wanted the profit without understanding the product. One evening, I overheard my father and Uncle Richard in a heated discussion just outside Grandpa's room. The Nantucket property alone is worth $20 million, Uncle Richard was saying. And the art collection? I'm more concerned about the company shares, my father replied. Those are the real prize. Father still controls 60% of Harrison Technologies. I cleared my throat loudly as I approached, and they immediately changed the subject to the weather. As the weeks passed and Grandpa's condition improved slightly, the doctor spoke of moving him home with round-the-clock care. During this time, I witnessed my relatives transform into caricatures of caring family members whenever medical staff or Grandpa was alert, only to revert to discussing assets and valuations the moment they thought no one important was listening. My parents made several attempts to undermine me with Grandpa, suggesting I was only there because of his money, just as they were projecting their own motivations onto me. Your daughter rarely visited before you were ill, I overheard my mother telling him. Thomas and I were concerned that she only appears now that things are uncertain. But Grandpa Walter shut that down immediately. Eleanor, Gracie speaks with me weekly, sometimes daily. I know exactly who has been present in my life and who hasn't. Let's not pretend otherwise. One night, about a month after his stroke, Grandpa asked the nurse to help him sit up. He gestured for me to close the door for privacy. Gracie, he said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. I need you to promise me something. Anything, I replied, taking his hand. When I'm gone, and we both know that day is coming sooner rather than later, I need you to be strong. Stronger than you've ever been. His eyes, still sharp and clear despite his weakened body, held mine. The others, they'll try to break you. They'll try to make you doubt yourself and your worth. Grandpa, listen to me, he insisted. I've watched how they treat you. How they've always treated you. Even now, when they think I'm asleep or too medicated to understand, I hear them. I see them. He squeezed my hand. Promise me you'll stand your ground. Promise me you'll remember everything I've taught you about integrity and strength. Tears welled in my eyes. I promise, Grandpa. Good girl. He leaned back against his pillows, suddenly looking exhausted. And one more thing. No matter what happens after I'm gone, know that everything I've done with purpose. Trust that I know what I'm doing. I didn't understand what he meant then, but I nodded anyway, sensing the profound importance of his words. 2 weeks later, Walter Harrison passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 82 years old. The funeral was an elaborate affair, befitting a man of his stature. Business leaders, politicians, and celebrities came to pay their respects alongside family members, some of whom I was certain Grandpa hadn't spoken to in years. My parents performed grief perfectly, my mother dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, my father accepting condolences with a solemn nod and firm handshake. Aunt Sarah sobbed dramatically beside the casket. Uncle Richard spoke at length about his close bond with his father during the eulogy, describing fishing trips that I knew for a fact had never happened. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple and true, sharing stories of the real Walter Harrison. His kindness to service workers, his habit of reading 3 newspapers every morning, his secret love of science fiction novels, his genuine interest in people's lives regardless of their status. I could feel my relatives' displeasure as I spoke. This wasn't the carefully curated image of the businessman they wanted to present. This was the actual man, flaws and all, who had been more of a father to me than my own ever had been. After the funeral, the family gathered at Grandpa's mansion for the reception. As I stood alone by the window, watching rain fall on the immaculate gardens, Benjamin Hoffman, Grandpa's longtime attorney and friend, approached me. Gracie, he said quietly. Walter asked me to tell you that the reading of the will is scheduled for next Tuesday at 10 a.m. at my office. He handed me a card. He specifically requested your presence. I nodded, tucking the card into my purse. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I'll be there. And Gracie, he added, his voice barely above a whisper. Walter wanted me to remind you of your promise to be strong. With that cryptic reminder, he moved away to speak with other guests, leaving me wondering just what exactly Grandpa had planned, and why I would need to be strong for it. The offices of Jameson and Hoffman occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in downtown Boston. The reception area featured marble floors, leather furniture, and original artwork that probably cost more than most people's homes. It screamed old money, power, and discretion. Exactly what you'd expect from attorneys who represented some of America's wealthiest families. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a simple black dress and the pearl earrings Grandpa had given me for my 25th birthday. The receptionist directed me to a large conference room where Benjamin Hoffman was organizing documents at the head of a long mahogany table. "Gracie," he greeted me warmly. "Thank you for being prompt. The others should arrive shortly." And arrive they did, in a parade of expensive suits and designer dresses. My parents entered with the confident air of people who expected to leave significantly wealthier than they arrived. My father nodded stiffly in my direction, but didn't speak directly to me. My mother pretended not to see me at all. Aunt Sarah made a show of kissing my cheek. "Darling, how are you holding up?" she asked loudly, though she moved away before I could answer. Uncle Richard was deep in conversation with his son, my cousin Daniel, discussing what sounded suspiciously like renovation plans for Grandpa's Cape Cod summer house. As everyone took their seats around the table, I noticed the calculating glances, the subtle positioning for importance. I chose a seat near Mr. Hoffman, away from the others. Aunt Sarah didn't miss the opportunity to comment. "Sitting apart from the family, Gracie? Still holding on to that grudge, I see." My father chuckled. "Some people never grow up." I bit my tongue, remembering Grandpa's words about standing my ground. This wasn't the time to engage. At precisely 10 o'clock, Benjamin Hoffman cleared his throat. "This will not stand. Walter clearly wasn't in his right mind. We'll contest this immediately." Mr. Hoffman seemed to have anticipated this reaction as well. "I should inform you that Walter underwent comprehensive psychological evaluations by 3 independent psychiatric experts just weeks before signing this will. All 3 certified his complete mental competence. Additionally, he recorded video testimony explaining his decisions in detail." He looked directly at my father. "Furthermore, as I'm sure you recall from the reading, any attempt to contest the will triggers the clause that eliminates the secondary provisions, including the $5 million trust fund Walter established for you and Eleanor Thomas. Despite his misgivings, are you certain you wish to proceed with a challenge?" My father's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish out of water. "This is outrageous," my mother finally managed, her voice trembling. "After everything we've done, what exactly have you done, Mother?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Years of hurt and anger bubbled to the surface. "Besides throw me out on my 18th birthday? Besides steal the college fund Grandpa set up for me? Besides cut me off from my brother for 9 years? You ungrateful little," she began, but my father cut her off with a sharp gesture. His expression suddenly changed, a calculating smile replacing his anger. "Gracie, let's not fight. We're family, after all. Perhaps we've had our differences in the past, but surely we can work together now. This inheritance, it's a chance for us to reconnect, to heal old wounds." The rapid shift from rage to faux reconciliation was so transparent it was almost laughable. 9 years of silence, and now suddenly he wanted to reconnect. Right after I'd inherited more than $1 billion. "I think we should continue this discussion in private," he suggested smoothly. "As a family." "Actually," Mr. Hoffman interjected, "there's one final matter to address." He slid a thick folder across the table to me. "Grace, Walter appointed you as the new CEO of Harrison Technologies, effective immediately. The board has been notified and is expecting you at their emergency meeting tomorrow morning." This final revelation was the tipping point. My father exploded. "This is insanity. She knows nothing about running a multinational corporation. She'll destroy everything my father built." He turned to me, abandoning all pretense of reconciliation. "You can't possibly think you're qualified for this. You have a meaningless job at a company no one's ever heard of. You'll run Harrison Technologies into the ground within a year." "That's enough, Thomas," Mr. Hoffman said firmly. "Walter made his decision. The documents are legally binding." As the meeting descended further into chaos, with relatives arguing and threatening legal action, I sat quietly, fingering the unopened letter from my grandfather. Despite the noise around me, I felt a strange sense of calm. Grandpa had trusted me with this responsibility. He believed in me when no one else did. Uncle Richard approached me as the meeting broke up, his expression unreadable. You know this isn't personal, Gracie. But this isn't right. Walter wasn't thinking clearly. It seems very personal to me, Uncle Richard, I replied evenly. And Grandpa was thinking more clearly than any of us realized. As I gathered my things to leave, my mother made one last attempt. Her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold. Darling, you must see reason. Let us help you. This is too much for someone your age to handle alone. I'm not alone, I said simply. I have the guidance Grandpa left me. And I have people I trust, people who didn't wait until I was wealthy to care about me. I walked out of the conference room with my head held high, clutching the folder of documents and my grandfather's letter, leaving behind a family united only in their shock and outrage. In the elevator down to the lobby, I finally opened the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Gracie girl, it began, in Grandpa's familiar handwriting. By now, you know what I've done. I hope you also understand why. You were the only one who loved me for me, not for what I could give you. That kind of love deserves to be rewarded. The days following the will reading were a blur of activity. News of my inheritance spread quickly, and suddenly I was the focus of intense media attention. Unknown granddaughter inherits tech billionaire's fortune, screamed the headlines. Reporters camped outside my apartment building hoping for comments or photos. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from relatives I barely remembered, friends I'd never met, and financial advisors eager to help me manage my newfound wealth. Mr. Hoffman arranged for additional security and helped me navigate the immediate legal and practical matters. The board meeting at Harrison Technologies was a tense affair, with several members clearly skeptical of my abilities. However, Grandpa had been thorough. He'd prepared detailed memos explaining his decision and outlining a transition plan that included experienced mentors to guide me through the initial period. Your grandfather spent the last year preparing for this transition, explained Diane Lewis, the company's CFO and one of the few board members who treated me with genuine respect. He believed in you completely. As overwhelming as the business side was, dealing with my family proved even more challenging. My parents made multiple attempts to contact me, alternating between thinly veiled threats of legal action and saccharine appeals to family loyalty. Aunt Sarah gave interviews to gossip columns, painting me as a manipulative gold digger who had somehow tricked her elderly grandfather. Uncle Richard tried a more direct approach, showing up at my apartment unannounced to reason with me. Through it all, I kept returning to Grandpa's letter for guidance. There will be pressure from all sides, he had written. Remember that you don't need to make any hasty decisions. Take time to learn, to think, to plan. The money isn't going anywhere, and neither is the company. Trust yourself, Gracie girl. I do. About a week after the will reading, I received a surprising message. My brother Jackson wanted to meet. We hadn't spoken in 9 years, not by my choice, but because our parents had effectively prevented any contact. Now 24, he had recently graduated from college and was working at an architecture firm in New York. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in a neighborhood where I wasn't likely to be recognized. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. The gangly 15-year-old boy had grown into a tall, confident young man, but his smile, that was still the same. Gracie, he said, standing to embrace me. It's been too long. For the first hour, we just caught up on the past 9 years, carefully avoiding the topic of our parents or the inheritance. He told me about his studies, his girlfriend Kate, his first job. I shared stories about my life at Green Tech, my friendship with Sophia, the small victories and struggles of building a life on my own. Finally, Jackson addressed the elephant in the room. I'm not here about the money, he said firmly. I want you to know that first. I didn't think you were, I assured him. You never cared about that stuff, even as a kid. Mom and Dad are furious, he admitted. They've been raging about contesting the will, claiming Grandpa was manipulated, all kinds of things. I sighed. I expected as much. I told them they were being ridiculous, he continued, surprising me. I reminded them that they were the ones who kicked you out, who cut you off from everything and everyone, including me. His eyes grew sad. I'm sorry I didn't try harder to find you, Gracie. They monitored everything. My phone, my computer, my mail. By the time I was in college and could have reached out on my own, I didn't know how to find you. It's not your fault, I said, squeezing his hand. You were just a kid. Jackson looked at me earnestly. I want you to know that I'm on your side. Whatever you decide to do with the inheritance, I support you. And I want us to be brother and sister again, regardless of any of that. Tears filled my eyes. In all the chaos of the past weeks, this was the first thing that felt truly right. After reconnecting with Jackson, I reached out to the two people who had become my surrogate family. Sophia and Marcus from Green Tech. We met for dinner at my new secure apartment. One of the first practical changes Mr. Hoffman had insisted upon. This is insane, Sophia said, looking around the penthouse with wide eyes. Last month you were complaining about your leaky faucet, and now you own a billion-dollar company. Marcus was more thoughtful. Walter Harrison was no fool. If he left you in charge, he had his reasons. Over dinner, I shared my confusion about what to do next. Part of me wants to tell my parents to go to hell, to use all this money and power to show them exactly what they threw away, I admitted. But I know that's not what Grandpa would want. That's not who I want to be. What about Green Tech? Marcus asked. We'll miss you, but we understand if you need to focus on Harrison Technologies now. An idea began to form, one that had been percolating since I first learned about my inheritance. What if I didn't have to choose? Harrison Technologies has resources Green Tech could only dream of. What if we collaborated, or even merged? Sophia's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. The more I thought about it, the more right it felt. Grandpa built Harrison Technologies on innovation and integrity. Green Tech embodies those same values, just with a focus on sustainability that Harrison hasn't fully embraced yet. Together, we could do something amazing. Marcus considered this. It would be a bold move. The Harrison board might resist. Let them, I said with newfound confidence. I control 60% of the company, and Grandpa didn't make me CEO so I could maintain the status quo. Over the next few weeks, a plan took shape. With Marcus and Sophia's help, along with guidance from Mr. Hoffman and key allies at Harrison Technologies, I developed a vision for the future that honored my grandfather's legacy while also reflecting my own values. During this time, my parents escalated their efforts. They filed a preliminary legal challenge to the will, claiming undue influence. When Mr. Hoffman's evidence of Grandpa's competence proved too strong to overcome, they tried a new tactic, a public relations campaign, painting me as ungrateful and vindictive, refusing to share my windfall with my loving family. The final straw came when they attempted to contact my new business associates, suggesting I was mentally unstable and warning them against working with me. That was when I finally made my decision. I called a press conference, my first public appearance since inheriting. With Jackson, Sophia, and Marcus standing beside me for moral support, I faced the cameras. My name is Grace Harrison, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Many of you know me only as Walter Harrison's granddaughter, the unexpected heir to his fortune. Today, I want to tell you who I really am. I shared my story, not to garner sympathy, but to establish truth. I spoke about being cut off at 18, about building a life from scratch, about my grandfather's guidance and support. I announced the merger between Harrison Technologies and Green Tech, outlining our vision for a technology company committed to innovation and sustainability. Finally, I addressed the elephant in the room: my family's claims. To those who have questioned my right to this inheritance or my ability to manage it, I say this: judge me by my actions, not by rumors or speculation. I intend to honor my grandfather's legacy by building something meaningful, something that contributes positively to the world. I took a deep breath before continuing. As for my parents, who have recently expressed such concern for my welfare after 9 years of silence, I am establishing the Walter Harrison Educational Foundation with a $100 million endowment. This foundation will provide scholarships and support for young people who, like me, find themselves cut off from family support. I invite Thomas and Eleanor Harrison to serve on the board of this foundation, not to manage the funds, but to learn firsthand about the challenges faced by young adults in such circumstances. It was both an olive branch and a boundary, an opportunity for reconciliation that didn't involve giving them control over anything. The reporters loved it, and the public response was overwhelmingly positive. The legal challenge to the will was dismissed 2 weeks later. My parents, faced with mounting legal costs and declining public sympathy, finally gave up. They declined my invitation to serve on the foundation board. But at least they stopped their campaign against me. With that hurdle cleared, I could finally focus on what mattered. Honoring Grandpa's trust in me by building something worthy of his legacy and my own values. 3 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office on the top floor of the Harrison Green Tech Tower, I looked out at the Boston skyline and reflected on how much had changed. The merger between Harrison Technologies and Green Tech had been successful beyond anyone's expectations. By combining Harrison's resources and market position with Green Tech's innovative, sustainable technology, we had created something truly special. Our stock had tripled in value. We'd expanded into 12 new countries, and our clean energy initiatives were changing communities around the world. More importantly, we'd done it the right way, with integrity, responsibility, and a commitment to making a positive impact. The Walter Harrison Educational Foundation was thriving as well. We'd already helped over 500 young people complete their education and start their careers. Each time I attended a foundation event and met the scholarship recipients, I saw reflections of my younger self. Determined, resilient, grateful for the opportunity to build their own futures. My relationship with Jackson had grown stronger each year. He now led our architectural division, designing sustainable buildings that showcased both beauty and environmental consciousness. His girlfriend Kate had become his wife, and they were expecting their first child, my future niece or nephew. Sophia had become our Chief Innovation Officer, turning her creative vision into reality with resources she once could only have dreamed of. Marcus served as my trusted advisor and headed our international expansion. My personal letter from Grandpa Walter, now framed in my private office, continued to guide me through difficult decisions and moments of doubt. Remember that wealth is a tool, not a treasure to be hoarded, he had written. Use it to build, to grow, to help others build and grow. That's how you create a legacy that matters. As for my parents, we had reached a fragile truce. After their initial fury subsided and their legal options were exhausted, they had retreated to a life funded by the $5 million trust Grandpa had left them despite his misgivings. We weren't close, and probably never would be, but the open hostility had faded into a distant, polite acknowledgement of each other's existence. That changed 6 months ago when my father called me out of the blue. His voice lacked its usual confidence as he explained that they were in financial trouble. Bad investments, excessive spending, and a luxury real estate venture that had collapsed spectacularly had wiped out most of their trust fund. We're not asking for a handout, Gracie, he insisted, though that was exactly what he was doing. Just a loan to get back on our feet. We are your parents after all. The old me might have taken satisfaction in their predicament, might have seen it as karmic justice for how they had treated me. But that wasn't the person Grandpa had believed I could be. That wasn't the person I had become. I won't give you a loan, I told him firmly. But I will offer you an opportunity. I explained that our foundation was opening a new program focused on financial literacy and mentoring for at-risk youth. You both have experience with how quickly wealth can disappear when mismanaged. That perspective could be valuable to these kids. My father was silent for a long moment. You want us to work for your charity? To admit our failures to strangers? I want you to use your experience to help others avoid the same mistakes, I corrected him. And yes, it would require humility. The position comes with a reasonable salary and benefits. Not enough to fund a luxury lifestyle, but enough to live comfortably while rebuilding. To my surprise, they accepted. Whether from desperation or a genuine desire to change, I wasn't sure. But over the past 6 months, something unexpected had happened. Working with young people who faced real hardship seemed to be slowly changing my parents. For perhaps the first time in their lives, they were focusing on someone other than themselves. It wasn't a Hollywood reconciliation. The years of hurt and abandonment couldn't be erased by a few months of better behavior. But it was a beginning. A chance for them to become people I might someday be able to forgive completely. Ending, today, as I prepared for the dedication ceremony of the new Walter Harrison Center for Sustainable Innovation, I thought about what my grandfather would make of all this. The company, stronger than ever, expanding in directions he might never have imagined. The foundation helping young people build futures of their own. The family he loved, broken and reassembled in new configurations, but healing, slowly. I like to think he would be proud. Not just of the business success, but of how I had handled the responsibility he entrusted to me. The true value of what Grandpa left me wasn't the money, or the company, or the properties. It was the lessons he taught me throughout my life. That integrity matters more than wealth. That true strength comes from lifting others up, not pushing them down. That forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about not letting it poison the future. In the end, I realized that my billionaire grandfather's greatest gift wasn't the inheritance that made headlines. It was the values he instilled in me long before I knew I would inherit anything. The belief that I was capable and worthy. The knowledge that wealth is measured not by what you have, but by what you give. The understanding that family isn't always defined by blood, but by who stands beside you when you need it most. Sometimes, the people who leave us give us the tools we need to rebuild what was broken. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a better one. As I turned from the window to prepare for the ceremony, I smiled at the thought of what Grandpa would say if he could see me now. Probably something like, "I told you so, Gracie girl. I always knew you had it in you." And he was right. He always was. Have you ever had someone believe in you when no one else did? Has an unexpected turn of events completely changed the course of your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the most beautiful transformations. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. And remember, true wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in how you choose to live your values every single day.